Well, conference realignment and Big 12 expansion has totally calmed down, and there's nothing to talk about. Or is there? Brett Yormark gave an update today. He was at Big 12 Media Days in Kansas City, and I will play you his full comments and full back and forth with the media. There was a lot that Yormark got into, and he took the podium and almost immediately, you can argue, called out the SEC and the Big 10, who have already been lobbying for expansion of the college football playoff beyond 12. Brett Yormark thinks that's premature.
Regarding the CFP, we cannot discuss changing the format before we even experience the 12-team playoff for the first time this year. Let's be thoughtful about those discussions eventually, but let's see how it unfolds this year.
Well, the SEC and Big 10 have already been meeting together about all of this, not just college football playoff expansion, but automatic buys in the playoff, how the sport should be governed moving forward, everything in light of the House settlement, and even should we have a college football playoff selection committee anymore, plus a scheduling agreement between the two conferences. And you can start to build the case that this is almost collusion, cutting everybody out, just playing each other. So is there concern from Yormark that the Big 12 won't have a seat at the table, so to speak, moving forward in college athletics and all this?
Well, listen, we have a big voice, and I'll make sure as long as I'm here, okay, we're doing what we need to do to make sure we're heard. But as far as I'm concerned, I wake up every morning, I've said this before, and I think about how do we make the Big 12 the best version of itself. I do not spend any time thinking about the Big 10 or the SEC. But we have a voice. As I said earlier, we collaborate often. The four commissioners do, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but it's very collegial, and I think we get a lot of stuff done together.
Well, you got to love the confidence from Yormark there, but if the Big 12 is going to have a seat at the table when it comes to just winning games and being competitive on the field, a large part of that will be revenue sharing, which once that kicks in, perhaps next year, it's going to be $20 to $23 million per school at first. So will Big 12 schools be able to hit that full revenue sharing number starting in year one?
We talk about rev share quite a bit. I can tell you that our schools all want to continue to compete at the highest levels, and they'll do whatever they need to in order to do that. I can't sit here today to say that everyone's going to spend up to the cap or not, but we're going to be competitive. We're one of the top conferences in America, and we'll continue to be that moving forward.
Yes, the expansion talk. It was there with Florida State and Clemson for a hot minute over the summer. Could that be something the Big 12 does? If anything like that were to ever happen, private equity would have to be involved to give the Big 12 some extra infusion of cash to make it happen. And it might come into play even if that's not a part of what is involved. The Big 12 may need it just to hit that revenue sharing number. And Brett Yormark continues to seem like he is not shying away from perhaps going down that road.
Everyone talks about private equity, and I don't really talk about private equity as much as I talk about should we be exploring a strategic partner, someone that provides capital resources and strategy to help us build our business. There's no pride in authorship, and I'm a big believer in outsourcing to people that know more than we do. Does that mean we end up with a strategic partner? Maybe, maybe not. But it's incumbent upon me as the commissioner to explore every and all options.
And now that $1 million question that you knew was going to get asked at some point here about Brett Yormark. There's been talk about UConn. Gonzaga is now in the Pac-12, but that was talked about for a while. I mentioned Clemson and Florida State. Everybody's monitoring the ACC situation to see if there are schools that could be siphoned off to the Big 12. So what does Brett Yormark think? What's the latest on Big 12 expansion?
This is the first one of these I've come to where expansion wasn't asked of you.
Yeah.
Are we beyond that for a little while?
Listen, I have no crystal ball. My board and my ADs already, know me well enough after 2 years that if I see an opportunity that can create value, then I'm going to pursue it for all the right reasons. But right now, listen, we're 16 strong. When I look back on my first 2 years, we've added 8 new schools. So integrating them, making sure that they're the best version of themselves as they become members of the Big 12, I think is critically important. So that really is my primary focus right now. And we're off to a good start.
You seem to indicate this a second ago on the podium, but how much optimism do you have about getting multiple teams into the playoff this year?
Well, if you look at the AP top 25 right now, we've got 2 in the top 11. So, listen, we got a fighting chance, and that's the goal. The goal was always to have multiple teams in the CFP, and I think, right now we're pacing towards that. We'll see where it ends up.
Where are you on AQs? I know you guys had a lot of time to figure that out.
Well, I think we need to be thoughtful about the what if, but we got to play out this year and see where it goes. And I trust my colleagues feel the same way about it. I mean, we haven't even experienced the 12-team format for the first time. Why are we talking about AQs and what the next iteration might be? So let's play it out. Let's be thoughtful about it. Let's have some discussion after this year, and then we'll figure it out.
The CBS sub-license, you talked about the idea of uncoupling basketball potentially at some point. How does that relationship with CBS help you figure that out?
Well, they had a huge appetite to take more. They've always had a relationship with ESPN for sub-licensing, but they wanted to get deeper with the Big 12. I don't blame them. And I think that just gave us an opportunity to have another major player, doing basketball with us. Next year, Fox comes in,
right.
Which I'm sure you're aware of. So we'll have Fox, we'll have ESPN, we'll have CBS. So I think that's a really good thing for us moving forward when you think about our basketball exposure.
How much access will Fox have next year to the basketball catalog?
As far as the amount of games?
As far as the amount of games.
Have you guys determined that? I think the number's 50.
50? 50 national games? 50 across
50,
Fox, FS1, etc.?
Yeah, 50 on Fox. Okay. I can confirm that, but I think the number's 50.
But I think this is right. Kansas and Arizona only played once in basketball this season.
Yes.
So that kind of speaks to how difficult it was to find double pairings, doesn't it?
It wasn't easy, when you think about the different matchups and the depth of the conference, but we've got to go back to the drawing board and think about that. That's a marquee matchup, as we all know, and one the fans want to see. And I'm not saying that's right or that's the way it's going to be moving forward. Again, first time at 20, we got to figure it out, what worked, what didn't, and address it at the end of the season.
With the meetings the SEC and Big Ten have been having about kind of the future of the sport, do you worry, or how much concern is there about the Big 12 having a voice moving forward in all this?
Well, listen, we have a big voice, and I'll make sure as long as I'm here, okay, we're doing what we need to do to make sure we're heard. But as far as I'm concerned, I wake up every morning, I've said this before, and I think about how do we make the Big 12 the best version of itself. I do not spend any time thinking about the Big 10 or the SEC. But we have a voice. As I said earlier, we collaborate often. The four commissioners do, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but it's very collegial, and I think we get a lot of stuff done together.
What was so the women are starting on December 21st. The men are starting on or around January 1st. They don't get that midweek break like they got last year.
Yeah.
What was the logic in starting the women earlier and the men where they started, aside from the women starting their tournament 1 week earlier?
You know what? I don't know the facts on that, to be candid with you.
Let me ask you this then. Do you worry about the grind of the men playing 2 games a week for 10 weeks going into March?
I just think that's the way it played out this year, and I will tell you that we don't make any of those decisions without engaging with the coaches. When we have those spring meetings, we lay it all out for them, and they have a big seat at the table as it relates to the schedule and the buys and so on and so forth. So if it doesn't work, then we're going to have to revisit it next year. That's why I said earlier, 20 game schedule this year, and then we'll see how it plays out.
When you talk, following up on that Kansas-Arizona thing, when you talk about you have 5 opportunities for double plays. What goes into figuring out how to do that? Some of it's rivalry.
Some of it's rivalry. Some of it's travel. There's lots of different principles that go into it.
Do the media partners pipe in? Because I'm wondering maybe they wanted a second Arizona.
No, they don't. They don't pipe in. This is really something that we have a scheduling committee of ADs, and we work very closely with our ADs and coaches on that. But the media partners don't weigh in on that.
Well, I appreciate Brett Yormark taking as much time as he did throughout Big 12 Media Days to speak to those of us that were there. Not that this probably matters that much to any of you, but it's always nice to have a commissioner that's just out there being personable. He came by and said hi to everybody before he went up for his press conference. He had a nice note that was signed by him waiting for everybody who attended there. He clearly cares about trying to build some relationships there with the media and make sure that everybody is treated well. So I appreciate Brett Yormark for that. He projects a lot of confidence for the league, and that was very, very apparent in all of his answers on the podium and in the breakout session. I continue to be impressed. You can debate the merits of every single move he makes, but I think there's a lot to like about just the general wave of confidence that he gives this league. And both he and his staff, by the way, who also do an excellent, excellent job. So with that, let me know what you think in the comments. Are you loving what Brett Yormark had to say about Big 12 expansion, calling out the SEC or Big 10? Let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you have not. And if you're a Big 12 fan, subscribe to my Big 12 newsletter, Open for Business, ofbnews.com is the way to do that. Take care, guys, and I will talk to you soon.